Hi guys, thanks for tuning in slash watching a very special Grad Life episode. As you can tell, we are all participating digitally because none of us can be face-to-face currently. So the point of this episode is really just to talk about what it's like being a grad student in the midst of this pandemic, which sounds absolutely insane at this
Wild.
point, right? But
Yes.
This is
I
something
feel
to
like,
remember in the future.
Oh
I
my
think
gosh, for
like
sure.
I was talking about it with my friends the other day, and we were talking about how we're literally in history right now. Like, we are taking part in history right now. Like, it's not fun or it's not like great at all, but this is something that
Yeah.
everyone's going to remember. This is going to be marked
Mhm.
down forever
It's
now.
interesting for sure, right? Especially considering like how other people are handling this, and everyone's, implementing different things, like in terms of countries at least, in terms of like different modifications for each institute, and nothing is the same across the board. So it's really important to talk about this because there's different things that other people could be doing, and where do we fall into that place, right?
Definitely. So I guess to start, maybe also I want to mark the date. Today is March 26th. So
Okay.
Western itself has been closed, or at least offering digital classes, since the 18th, I believe. So it's been about
Right.
a week since the university shut down in-person classes and moved to an online teaching module. And I believe the university officially locked down not last night, but the night before at
Yes.
11:59 p.m., right? Like, all non-essential services
Mhm.
shut down.
Yeah.
So that's currently where we are with this. And how our university is dealing with it. I think Western was actually the first university to switch to an online learning
I think
module,
so.
Which
And
is
maybe,
strange.
yeah,
You really would have expected like Toronto to
that's
be
what
the
I expected
first.
as well. Yeah, for
because
sure.
it's such a central hub. Like,
Hmm.
it's so densely populated and there's so many students there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's what. Yeah.
yeah, Western did it first.
So
Crazy.
do you think that's a good thing? Do you think it's too severe to start right now? Because I know a lot of people are complaining, saying, we don't even have cases, like this isn't even a hub. So why are we implementing all of these rules? In general, I think it's a good thing. I think it's great, but these are the
I
naysayers,
Oh,
right?
definitely. I
Yeah.
think it's more important to be preventative than it is to be tertiary, right?
Hmm.
Mhm.
What we can do, because the long and short of it is, if we're looking at this like a case study, nobody wants to end up like Italy did,
Oh, of course
right?
not. Definitely not. It's
And the
tragic what's
way
going on. Yeah.
and the way for that to happen is to shut things down early. Personally, like, I'm totally great with it. I think it's great
Hmm.
that the university switch, and I understand that there's definitely going to be students that are affected by this that don't have any control over the situation, whether it's about moving back home and maybe they don't have access to internet at home, or they
For
don't
sure.
have a home environment, they don't have the resources that they would have while they were on campus. Like, I understand that a university environment oftentimes offers elements of a home environment, or an environment that students might not be able to get when they're not on
Hmm.
campus. So I understand that it's probably very difficult for students, but I think, I don't know, in the name of public health, I think it was a very smart move.
In the long run, I definitely think there's going to be, yeah, long
Yeah.
lasting implications. Hashtag flatten the curve, as many people are doing right now. But yeah.
Yeah, I think Canada was trying to learn the mistakes that Europe made, where they jumped on it too late. So they waited for their cases
Yes.
to get into the tens of thousands before they started to even consider closing things down. So
Right.
it's
And
I
that's
can
definitely a
understand the
problem with the
frustration.
UK. Yeah.
Oh, oh, geez, don't UK. Oh,
Yeah.
I got a story actually about the UK. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and she told me from, I think she said one of her family members said in London, there were the day before the Prime Minister did full lockdown for 3 weeks. People were
Hmm.
still, as many people were still on the tube as it would have been during a regular rush hour.
I
Oh
saw that
yeah.
on the news.
Right.
This is the thing about British people. We don't panic. We don't show much emotion when
Keep
it comes
calm
to
and carry
Keep
fear.
on.
calm and carry
Exactly.
on.
It's like, oh, it will pass. But then that's when you need someone to tell them, stay indoors or we're going to get the police.
Yeah.
And I
Quite
think the thing that people really need to keep in mind about this is, like, yes, we're all young. Yes, we're relatively healthy. At the end of the day, the majority of us, I don't want to say all of us because obviously there's exceptions, but the majority of us, if we do end up with COVID, we are going to have relatively mild symptoms. But it's not about us. It's the fact that we could all be vessels for it and end up transferring it to someone who's significantly more vulnerable than the rest of us and could be significantly more affected.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the part that people are struggling with right now. They're like, well, if I'm not having any symptoms, then I must be fine. So why can't I go and do X, Y, Z?
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, what was it? They because some people are what was the word again?
Immuno. Oh,
Asymptomatic.
asymptomatic. Yeah.
Asymptomatic. Like you could have it, but you could not be really affected by it. You could just a carrier essentially.
Yeah. We're all just
Mm-hmm.
vessels for the disease, like petri
Exactly.
dishes.
Exactly.
Yes.
And like, at least for me, so what was supposed to happen was on Friday the 13th, I was supposed to fly out to Florida. And we ended up canceling that because the Thursday before we were supposed to fly out, that's when the Ontario government announced that they were shutting down schools for a couple of weeks. Like everything, the ball started rolling with cancellations and preventative measures here. And immediately, like the next day, the Friday, so the day that we were supposed to fly out, I came down with a sore throat and a stuffy nose.
Stay inside. Stay
Right?
indoors. Yes.
So I've actually been in self-isolation for the last 2 weeks. I haven't left my house unless it's to like walk my dog, and even then we're making sure like we're not coming in contact with anyone, or we move to like the other end of the street. Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's just like, so for me, I'm like, do I have a cold, or did I potentially catch something on my way home? Like, I don't
That's
know.
the thing, right?
Right?
Yeah. No, and I know I was sort of scared. So my sister just came back from Ireland about, I think on Friday. So I drove all the way up to Pearson. I was like, oh no, this is ground zero. Like, what am I going to do? I brought my gloves. I brought my mask. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to come in contact with. So she's staying with me in my 1-bedroom apartment. And so self-isolation. Yes. Just to make sure, but so far so good.
Yeah. And Gavin, you're still here. Like, you didn't end up flying home, right?
No, I didn't end up flying home. It was a lot easier for me to stay here. I mean, I'm currently at my girlfriend's place now, so we're crashing
Quarantine
it
together.
Yes. Well,
Yes.
she still has to work, so and as work is in like she works at part-time at Loblaws, so
Okay.
there's no
So she's like an essential worker right now.
Oh yeah.
Oh gosh. Yeah. How's she finding it?
She gets to see how crazy people are in grocery stores.
That's fair. Yeah. Which could be very crazy, I can imagine.
The hoarding mentality.
Oh my
and
gosh.
Oh god, I don't know where people got the idea that toilet paper was going to save them.
Do you know what it is? I think the news started saying that a symptom of COVID is diarrhea. Yeah. So everyone's scared. They're just gonna, so toilet paper.
Yeah, but 5 jumbo packs, that's unless you have 3 newborn children, I think that's excessive.
Yeah.
Then, no, it's excessive in any sense. So
I think I saw the
Stop
craziest videos.
Yeah.
I saw the craziest videos from Australia of people getting to fist fights over them because like someone has like 6 in their trolley. One person like decides to try and take one because they don't have any, and then the 2 women start fighting that one woman who took it. But then the grocery manager came over and told that people were 5 saying like you can only have 2, and they wouldn't accept that.
I think that's what just needs to happen. Like at the end of the day, you don't need 5 packs of toilet paper.
You don't. The other woman was definitely in the right.
Like you just don't. But speaking about how this is affecting people, like how are you guys feeling throughout all this? Like we're all in our, like I'm at my parents' house. Like I didn't I didn't end up going back to London after we canceled our trip to Florida. I just stayed here because I immediately got sick. So I've been here since. So like how are you guys doing? Like how are you guys feeling about all this?
So I officially stopped going into work on Thursday, so literally a week ago. And the first few days, it was hard. It was hard coming up with a routine. It was hard trying to feel productive when I was at home. I'm sort of into it now. It has definitely taken at least a week to get adjusted, but it's difficult. I thought it was difficult, at least in the beginning for me. And from here on out, I don't know. Hopefully it's going to be easier, but yeah.
Okay. What about you, Gavin?
I actually, the last time I was in the lab was on the 12th when they said they were moving classes online. We were given the option, if you guys want to start working from home now, you can. So quite a few people then just jumped to slowly trying to set stuff up at home. But it was definitely, I guess, frustrating the fact that I just had to adapt to working at home because I consider home as a place where I'm not really supposed to be working.
Agreed.
So I'm having to break that habit and merge the two together, which is difficult because you always find a reason to do something else.
There's
Whether
always a
it's
bed like
ex-
a few steps away from me, and it's always a good idea to just lie down all the time.
for me, it's like
At
there's
least that's
something
what
to
I'm struggling with.
oh, for me, it's like there's something to clean. Oh, maybe I'll just read instead. Oh, maybe I'll bake that thing I want to make. So it's one thing after the other
Yeah.
right now.
Oh yeah.
Mhm. So
I
But
feel the
for
same way.
both of you, is your research affected by this? Like by you having to be at home?
Yes.
for me, right
Yes.
now, no, it's actually not.
I am a little bit, and that's just because, I have a committee meeting coming up. I really wanted to get certain results in, which required me to be in the lab. I did as much as I could last week before I had to stay at home. And since then, all non-essential research has been cut, aka if I'm not working on COVID-19, I can't be doing any research in the lab. So I'm not technically allowed to go in. So as of now, I can be productive on other things such as working on my thesis, writing manuscripts, that sort of thing. But other than that, I sort of miss doing experiments. But
Who would have thought?
I miss them because I would like to have more production in that sense, in terms of hardcore results rather than just the writing aspect. And it's hard for me to differentiate being productive in terms of my writing rather than being productive in terms of the results that I produce. Yeah.
Definitely. What about, so Gavin, you're not affected.
Well, at least luckily before all this happened, I got new data that I quickly converted and processed that I knew I couldn't really do from home. So I got all that out the way. But so
Nice.
now I just have to worry about some data plotting, which I can do either on this laptop, and I can also connect to my lap computer remotely from home.
That's
So
convenient.
yeah,
Yeah.
Google Desktop Connect extension. Anyone doesn't have it, it's very useful. But
Mhm.
I can still connect to programs via here as long as the Wi-Fi connection's good. It's not an issue.
Mhm.
And this is actually a weird blessing in disguise that I can then use this time for reading and writing. So at the end of
Yeah.
this, I might potentially make my final year next year easier.
That's fair. And
So
that's something that, I've been thinking about, because if I dedicate this time towards the writing that I would have put off later, hopefully it saves me some time during the last year. But
yeah,
yeah,
because
hopefully if all
then
goes well.
you could then just completely focus on like any last experiments you need to get finished.
Right.
Hopefully they work out as planned.
What about you,
I
Monica?
think it's
How's it
a,
affected
Yeah.
you?
Hmm.
well, I'm at my parents' house, so productivity is a little bit different
I can
here
imagine.
than what it would be if I
Yeah.
were just at my place in London. My research is completely unaffected by this because I'm doing qualitative research. The only thing that's a little bit different is because my participant pool is pediatric oncology nurses. All of my participants have requested that we have some sort of, instead of a face-to-face interview, like an in-person interview, that we have to do something via Zoom or via phone, obviously, because they're working with a severely immunocompromised population. They can't risk anything.
Yeah.
But everything for me is still moving along as planned. I'm still transcribing interviews. I'm still interviewing participants. I'm still doing everything. I think what I'm struggling with though is everyone considers this time to be a time of massive productivity because you're at home, you have your work with you, why not do your work? But I find that for me, I feel like that's a pipe dream.
Mm-hmm.
I get frustrated with myself sometimes because I'm still expected to be as productive as I would be if nothing was happening, but I'm finding it really difficult to be productive at times.
For
And
sure.
I don't know if that's just because I'm living at home. Is it because we're living in a pandemic? I'm just finding that at times I'm struggling and I'm getting really mad at myself for being well, why am I so tired today? Why can't I do this? Why can't I just work on this? Why can't I put X, Y, and Z together? Why can't I write this?
Yeah.
I want to do all these things. I have this huge list of oh my God, these are all the things that I could potentially get done with all this time now. But I'm finding that at times it's difficult. I'm beating myself up for not being as productive as I would like to be because it's well, what else are you going to do? All you have is time on your hands.
And I see all of these posts on the internet that say, right now is the time to make yourself better, to do all these productive things that you wish you could do because you're at home and you have all the time in the world. But it's overwhelming, because now that you have all this time, you think that you should be doing even more with your time, and it just doesn't equate, right? You still have to do the same prep work, you still have to do
Mm-hmm.
the same, and even the transition itself is difficult. Like me trying to set up Zoom right now was a struggle, because this is my first time, and I know there's going to be many more conferences to come, but it's just difficult trying to transition through that without without having all this time in the world anyways to begin with. So it seems like there's a lot of pressure for sure.
Oh,
I think it's also
definitely.
that with the situation itself, it's still a lot to think about since it's
Mhm.
ongoing and developing. And it's just, I think, especially for some students, or even just even just people that maybe have mental health issues or are more prone to anxiety and stress, because
Right.
it's a lot to consider, especially if they have to think about family members that are in Canada or even outside of Canada. I know I have a couple friends that they're in this they from the States, so they're a bit concerned about some of the older family members down there, that they can't travel back there because it's a risk just in case they bring
Mhm.
something with them.
Right.
So it's a lot, because they don't know how to deal with it, and it's just slowly trying to get their mind off of it, which
Right.
doesn't necessarily end up doing work. You might just do something that makes you feel good, which
Or
is
something that
rarely writing and
distracts
reading.
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which could be from reading, cooking, watching YouTube videos, or just
Mhm.
going on Netflix and seeing 10 hours pass in the blink of an eye.
Oh, 100%. I've noticed that I've been doing that. I'm like, I don't think it's necessarily about a routine, but I'm trying to think of things that I can do that are like, for me, give me a sense of like peace and quiet so I can
Right.
just do whatever I need to do. So, like, I've noticed that like I'm exercising a lot more because it's like, well,
That's a
why not?
positive. Yeah.
And like, you
Hmm.
can't think of things when you're like breathing so hard or like, I don't know, I got to paint by number, or I'll watch
Mhm.
like a million episodes of Great British Bake Off because it's like it's
There we
super
go.
Amazing.
relaxing. Like
But
I'm just finding like ways to occupy my time now, but
Right.
in doing so, it's bringing back like these feelings of guilt. And then, yeah, these feelings of anxiety, because I know for me at least, like, I have family members that are higher risk.
Mhm.
So, like, worrying about them, worrying, what if you're an asymptomatic carrier?
Right.
Like, how long is this going to be happening for? Like, there's so many, like, I
That's the
don't,
big question, right?
oh,
Oh
God.
man. It like starts off with 2 weeks, and then the next thing you know, it's going to be like 3 or 4 months that you're out of commission in terms of work and in terms of the normal productivity that we're used to. So it's hard to conceptualize that this is not going to be just 2 weeks, that this isn't, I guess, short-term temporary, right? So how are you guys coping with that? Do you think, how is the staying inside in terms of that? How does that make you feel?
uh, well, I still go on runs when I can, because I know if I stayed inside continuously, I'd probably go insane.
Yep. Yeah, that's fair.
But the running, and well, my girlfriend's got a dog, so I occasionally take the dog out. So
Hmm.
I'm getting fresh air, so that's the important thing.
Yes, I think
Um,
that's definitely key.
it's really just got to find stuff to do. I mean,
Hmm.
occasionally I have moments for a few hours, and like I'm just gonna sit down and do absolutely nothing.
Everybody
Sometimes you
needs
need it.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure, for
But
sure. I agree.
I thought, weirdly, I also take this time to try and practice new things. I wanted to get more into baking and cooking. So,
Hmm.
well, with whatever ingredients I can get my hands on, I'll make work.
Hmm.
That's probably the real challenge right now.
Hmm.
And then I also thought, along with reading and writing, this might be the best time to teach myself a second language, because I got all this extra time
Oh,
on my
that's
hands.
fair.
So maybe in the next few months,
Mhm.
the next grad life, I'll speak partial French.
Oh my
We'll see
God.
what happens.
That's a
Wow.
useful language. Yeah.
You sound so productive, Gavin. I don't know. For me, there's days where
I
I'm
mean, I'm
literally
all
like,
talk right now. It's don't
I've
it's
already hit that point.
Yeah.
I'm not even there anymore. There's like some days where I'll literally like, if I know there's a room that I have to myself, I will literally just like lie on the couch and like put a podcast on and just lie there and stare at the ceiling.
Yeah.
Like,
That's therapy, I think.
I might
like,
want to quickly. I want actually, speaking of podcasts, and the one that we're I want to quickly plug one. It's called the it's got the Happiness Laboratory.
Okay.
Oh, I
It's got
haven't heard
some
of that
really
one.
good. My supervisor recommended to me yesterday, and they've got
Mhm.
3 new bonus episodes on how to stay positive and cope working at home while this is all unfolding.
Right.
So
Definitely.
That's definitely useful, especially in this time.
I think it's
so
also important that like if people are feeling upset or sad, like you're more than justified to feel those ways
Hmm.
in this time. Once again, like what we're going through is completely unprecedented. There's no
For sure.
guidebook on how to cope or how to feel when we're going through something like this because we've
Hmm.
never experienced something like this before.
No one
oh,
is usually in
Right?
lockdown for 2 weeks plus, right? So it's different for sure, for sure. So
Yeah,
in
it's
terms
hard.
of, yeah, I want to talk a little bit about how different faculties differ in terms, so we did touch upon this a little bit, but I wanted to talk about in terms of, the faculty emails that you get and that sort of thing. What have you been told about what's going on right now? And does it differ? Do you think it's just Western in general that's mandating certain rules, certain guidelines, or do you think things differ in between faculties?
Right. Um, I don't know if the faculties differ. I don't know if universities differ. I think if I make any comment on that, it's probably extrapolating in some regard just because I don't
Hmm.
know. But I know, at least for my faculty, because we're in health sciences, there's a lot of students that have like placements in the hospitals
I see.
or
Yeah.
do a lot of research in the hospitals, and those placements or those kinds of activities, unless once again it's deemed essential or work
Hmm.
that works towards COVID-19, it's all been canceled. Um,
Right.
everyone, I don't know. It's difficult. Like different people in my program have different experiences. I have friends whose
Hmm.
research is completely put on hold because their research is with older, more vulnerable populations, and they
Right.
can't risk going to meet those individuals. Whereas someone like me,
Hmm.
everything is running as they
Yeah.
normally would.
Right.
So the messages that we've gotten is just like, any work that is deemed non-essential for those who are doing placements or working in different hospitals or different areas, they're
Hmm.
not happening anymore. But I think there's an expectation that if you can do your research or if you can do your work, you're just supposed to
Do
keep
it.
calm and carry on.
That's the thing. And I know obviously this isn't your experience, but how do your friends see, their research being put on hold? Does that mean, are they scared they have to do an extra year? Are they concerned about that year X?
I think a lot of them are. A lot of them are just like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't
Right.
know what's going to come. Because for some of them, like the institutions, like some of them get data from different institutions, and those
Hmm.
institutions that they're supposed to get their data from are now closed.
Right.
Or they're working with populations that are more vulnerable, or they need to put in applications for getting certain data or
Yeah.
different ethics applications, but the institutions that they're supposed to be submitting to are also closed or are also only doing things that are deemed as essential at this point.
Hmm.
So definitely, when we put out questions on social media and things like that, there's a lot of
Right.
people I know whose research is just like, well, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this. And they're just kind of sitting there like,
Yeah.
well, what
Are
can I
they
do?
are they expected to still be productive? Is there that sort of stigma that still holds?
I feel like, see, part of me is like, it's a societal, this like pervasive academic culture thing that
Hmm.
is still telling us that we need to be productive. But then the other
Right.
part of me is just like, have our brains just been warped in that way because of academia? And so we all think
Probably.
that we need to be productive in this time, but we don't actually like need to hold that standard of productivity that we
Hmm.
used to.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I'm sure there's definitely some stigma associated with it. Um, I just, I wonder if there's just guidelines in general, for supervisors and and mentors and people who work closely with students who are doing this sort of research. There should be some sort of reassurance that everything's going to be okay. And I feel
Yeah.
like at this point, it seems more so of keep doing what you're doing if you can, and if not, we'll reconvene later.
yeah.
Right? So there's a bit of an uncertainty, I think, for some students, definitely.
I think with the issues as well that for the university making all these decisions, there some of them were like made within like 3 or 3 hour gaps. So
Right.
the departments and then your supervisors are at the mercy of whatever
Oh,
discussions
definitely.
go
Yeah.
on if administration. So if they say one thing, they prepare for that, but they go like, oh, actually, we're just going to close everything. They then have to tell them
Yeah.
to then relate to all of us to say, oh, by the way, this is all going to be closing now. It was like 2 days ago when they said, oh, all the doors, key, card access, and manual key are going to be locked unless
Yes.
you're the very few people that they actually need on site. So they said, if you don't come get your stuff now from your lab or office by midnight, you're not going to be able to get it at least for the next few weeks.
Yeah.
So it's definitely ongoing, and I do think the university should think, at least after they've sorted out the online classes for good, start to think about what to do for students who are supposed to graduate definitely in April.
Yes.
And end of the summer. I think they need to think about how they can accommodate for them, because April they're definitely not going to be able to graduate on time. They can probably still submit the thesis.
And how does that work then? It's probably thesis or defense only status at that point, hopefully, right? Yeah.
But people at the end of August, if they still needed to get more data now before finish writing, they're not going to be able to. So it's either do you tell them just to write whatever they have and publish it, or do you let them stay longer in the winter, but on a, like, I guess you could do the thesis defense only, but this seems a bit unfair.
Right.
In that regard.
Because then I think when you're a thesis defense only and you've passed your required years for stipend, then you're not guaranteed funding.
Yeah.
In that sense, right? So it seems a little bit like a catch-22 there. And I've also heard that some people, even in terms of defense, if you're ready to defend, people have decided to set up video conferences and that sort of thing. So Zoom defenses, which do you think that's better, worse, the same?
I think it's a happy medium, because I think about all the work that goes, like, I think about us, right? And how hard we're working. Like, imagine you're about to defend and something like this happens. Would you rather have your defense deferred, or would you rather have it go, but just happen via Zoom? I know myself personally, I would just rather have it happen via Zoom. I would hate to have to defer it.
Oh yeah, no, I would definitely try to get it as soon as possible. And if it was through the Zoom, it's through Zoom. And I also thought about that too. And if you're, doing a PhD defense and you have externals coming in, it's probably easier for the externals to actually show up to your defense rather than, having the university pay for them to come in and that sort of thing. So maybe there's more incentive that way. Maybe.
Potentially.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. You don't want to, especially for defense, you definitely don't want to put off. I know some computational exams at the moment have now been pushed back. But I think that's because when they ask, I know in my department, because they ask us to sometimes write equations, draw diagrams.
Oh yeah.
So you can't really do it on Zoom unless you're very good with a mouse and touchpad.
Yeah. You use your notebook and then you show it up to the screen.
Yeah, just hold it up. I have some friends that are in professional programs currently, like professional graduate programs, and they don't know if they're going to graduate. And it really sucks, because when it comes to a professional program, you're paying significantly more out of pocket.
For sure.
For these experiences. Like, I have one friend who gave me permission to use her experience. And I won't say what university or what program or anything, but they are in a professional program. They pay tens of thousands of dollars for tuition to be in this program. Their committee members happen to be individuals that are doing what's deemed essential research at this time. And so even finding time to meet with committee members or have a conversation with committee members about their work is not happening, because they're doing all of this essential work at this point. Classes are now either moved online or canceled. People that need to do research or do certain types of research with different populations or needed specific equipment who now don't have access to it, it's not happening. And so this friend is just like, I just spent tens of thousands of dollars on my tuition and I'm supposed to be graduating by this date. And like, it's all up in the air now. Like, I can't get a hold of my committee members. I can't get a hold of anyone. The university I go to has these like wishy-washy policies about how they're going to help us. Or if you go and you email the person that they say to email you for, and you need help and you email that person, then that person refers you to another person, and it ends up being this huge cyclical mess. Like no one knows. Like no one knows what is happening. No one knows what they're supposed to do. And like, I understand why that's happening, because everything's changing so rapidly, but there's a bunch of students that are just left hanging who have invested so much that now it's just like,
And there's that uncertainty, right? Like, will they be penalized? Will they have to do an extra year? Will they have to pay that extra tuition, right? There's so many uncertainties, and it can eventually affect your life down the road, like in the next year or however long this ends up taking, right? And if you don't have that contingency plan, and if you don't have other mentors or supervisors, you know, telling you how to go about it, it makes it very difficult then to plan and to, you know, have that sense of reassurance going forward, right?
Yeah, or even currently, like I couldn't imagine if everything of mine was all of a sudden on hold and like I
Mm-hmm.
had these impending deadlines or I can't get in contact with anyone or nobody knows what's going on. Like
Mm-hmm.
I could like the amount of stress that that would cause is
Oh yeah,
absolutely like that's insane. Like
it is
where
insane.
you're just stuck. Like there's like I
Yeah.
don't even know how to
And
accurately describe it.
yeah, and I wanna bring it back to our experiences a little bit. Do you feel like you've had a lot of support in terms of, you know, supervisors, committee members? Do you talk frequently? I know it's something in my lab at least where we try to send emails, even if it's just, I'm doing well, working on this, like not even showing results, just to make sure like there's a line of communication going. Is that something that's still going on with your labs?
Yeah, well, we're still having our bi-weekly group meetings via Zoom. We had our first one actually
Oh.
yesterday. My supervisor made a competition to who had the best virtual background, so that's why I've got a moving
Did yours
volcanic
win, Gavin?
eruption.
Did you win?
We actually didn't announce the winner. I think
Oh.
she just wanted to see what people would do.
You should follow up.
Hmm.
I think, to be honest, I think she would have won. She wore a blue Star Trek Lieutenant Commander uniform and had the bridge of the
Oh
Enterprise
my
behind her.
God.
So like, I can't compete with
That's,
that.
yeah, amazing.
But we do still have bi-weekly group meetings, and then
Mhm.
after that, we also in those off weeks we have our individual meetings still. She also set up a Zoom coffee break meeting to
Oh,
happen at 10 a.m. every day. It's just open. So you don't have to go there. It's just if you want. If you have nothing to do and it's 10 a.m. in the
mhm.
morning, you can jump on and see if anyone's just chilling on there. Just so you know,
Aw,
there's still someone to talk to outside
Oh,
of the
that's really
home. So
nice.
that's really
That's,
nice. You're just
yeah.
able to like keep contact open.
exactly,
Mhm.
yeah.
Aw.
And yeah, my other supervisor, we're still having the group meetings, but he's
Mhm.
got a lot of his plate at the moment
Right.
because he's like the head of
He's
the
quite busy.
chair of our institution. So he had to put out a lot of stuff when it getting cancelled. He had to like sort all that out. So that was a lot.
Um, yeah, no, definitely. That's a lot to deal with. I
Mhm.
specifically don't work in a lab for my dissertation.
Mhm.
So my supervisor contacted me to see how I was doing and see how things were going. And I kind of just give updates on a relatively regular basis, just to say like, hey, this is what's going on with data collection.
Mhm.
I've interviewed XYZ people, the like whatever transcripts are uploaded here,
Right.
like blah blah blah. It's just kind of like an updates based thing, but nothing too crazy. The research center I work at holds the same kind of thing, like a weekly meeting every Thursday as well, just to talk. Like if someone just wants to talk about their research and get some feedback, or if people literally just want to see each other's faces, and or
Mhm.
like they're feeling a little bit isolated and they just want to see other people, that happens. Um, Other than that, though, it's nothing crazy. Like I definitely got like multiple group chats happening. I've noticed
Oh
That's
that like
yeah,
it's
amazing.
more so happening
yeah.
like with friends that
Yeah.
are explicitly trying to stay in contact with one
Mhm.
another.
Hmm.
Which is nice, right? Like it's good to keep in contact. We're doing social distancing, but not social media distancing, right? So that's something to keep in mind.
I was kind of making the joke
Yeah,
that when
we're
this is
physically
all over,
distanced.
yeah.
Yes.
I was thinking that when this is all over, I bet people are just not going to go back to work. They're going to get so used to working virtually, it's going to stay like that.
Might as well, right? Like if we manage to get everything done at home, what's the point, right?
So I don't need
Well,
your institution. I can work from home.
Yeah.
well, that's what I'm thinking is like, what are, at the end of all of this, like none of us are going to be the same.
No, definitely not,
You know what
right?
I mean? Like there's
Mhm.
there's been a shift. Like we're not there's been a point in time that we are never going to go back to.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And I don't know how that's going to work moving forward. Like in terms of the work that we're doing, are policies going to change about how we need to be doing our work or how work
Hmm.
is going to be done moving forward? Or, even just like personally, like are your relationships with people going to change? Is your relationship with yourself going to change? Are your feelings going to change? Like I just think that we're going through this humongous shift currently that like there's not a point of return at this point.
I think
No,
people are going to have
definitely.
a bigger appreciation for hygiene, especially hand hygiene
Yes, wash your hands.
after this, and
Yeah.
not coughing into your hands or sneezing into the open air like a 5-year-old.
Do you think there's going to be more paranoia associated with, going out and that sort of thing, at least in the first little while?
I think so.
I think people are going to be significantly more cautious about getting sick. I think that
Right.
when this distancing, I like to call it physical distancing instead of social distancing, because the point of it is just to be like physically apart from one another, but socially we're still supposed to remain, or at least try to remain connected so that we can all stay sane. But like, I do think that people are going to become significantly more cautious when this kind of physical distancing dissipates. Like, and if people are seeing each other, I think you're going to be having a lot more like nights in than going out to different places or things like that. But I don't know what's going to happen, because this is going to last for a while and it's going to come in waves. So I don't know how people are going to be approaching this going forward. I do think people are going to be overall more cautious, 100%.
I can see that too. And I feel like the transition back into work is going to be slow, at least in my opinion, because, you can't just have everyone from home immediately go back into work in their little cubicles, like in my bullpen area where my desk is, right? Like it's going to be a slow transition, I think, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. I just think we're in a very, very weird time right now. And I'm flip-flopping a lot in terms of how I feel. Sometimes I feel fine. Sometimes, like yesterday, I was really proud of myself. I was like, you know what? I had a really productive day. I went and like verified this transcript and shot out a million emails and did XYZ. And then there's other days where I'm like, okay, you know what? Like I typed a paragraph and that's enough.
Yeah. And I heard from a friend who gave me some really good advice in terms of how to feel productive when you don't feel like you're productive. So she told me about, creating a task log, and every time you do something, whether it's minor, whether it's significant, because, in your head, you have these really big goals, like I'm going to write my thesis, I'm going to write the entire intro of my thesis or something like that. And at the end of the day, it doesn't get done and you feel like you haven't done anything. So if you create, sort of task log saying I worked on this section or I wrote these few sentences here, you can, assess how you're going and make sure you're more or less the same sort of productive, or if productivity went down one day, that you can catch up another day. So it's a good, self-assessment at the end of the day to see whether you were actually doing something with your time, at least one thing, rather than, you didn't accomplish the thing that you wanted to accomplish the day of, but you did do something. So that's one way to, try to feel productive.
Yeah, I have not done that.
Me neither. I tried it yesterday for the first time.
I might do that today.
Yeah.
I'm the person that'll write introduction.
Me too.
And I'm that person that does like those bigger and like won't check it off until it's absolutely done. So it's always this like persistent line in my to-do list of things to do.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? And so she warned me against not doing to-do lists because, like you said, you have all of these lines that just don't end up getting checked off. So to have the feel of being productive, you can say, I wrote 3 sentences today, and it's something that shows up on your sticky note, on your computer, or in your notebook or something like that. And you can be like, okay, I wrote down something. I did something today. And we can like do something else maybe. Or even if you worked out, say you worked out today, you worked on yourself. Great, right? So there's different ways that you can definitely combat that for sure.
Yeah. Or like if you laid on your couch all day and did absolutely nothing, you're still
that
investing
works.
in yourself. You're just investing in your mental health.
Meditation.
Do what you got to do to make yourself feel better. You know what I mean?
Meditated for 30 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Or like something maybe for me, like meditating is still like listening to a podcast, or like, I have my paint by number, like here on the table beside me is like working on my little paint by number every day. But I don't know. I think it's important that like if you feel like you can be productive and you feel like you can go about doing this work, then by all means, all the power to you, go and do that work. And if you feel satisfied by it, then like 100% that's amazing. But if you feel like you're incapable of being productive, or you find that it's hard to be productive, and like I sit here saying these things, but like I'm constantly beating myself up over it. But like I do think it's important that we're more gentle with ourselves, especially in this time. Right. And I know that I'm struggling with it 100%. Like I'm constantly beating myself up, but I do think it's important that, if you feel like you can't be productive, it makes sense as to why you can't be productive. Once again, we're living in a time that's completely
Yeah.
different from anything anyone has ever experienced, but like, it's
Mm-hmm.
just, it's hard not to beat yourself up. So like if anyone
sure.
else is feeling those feelings, like I totally empathize, because I'm finding myself, there are times where I'm like, all right, I'm going to go do this now. And I sit here with
Mm-hmm.
my laptop and like my eyes just glaze over, or like, I'm just incapable
Yeah.
of
You can't
being
expect to
productive
be, you
sometimes.
can't expect to be productive when you feel like you have all this time in the world. Like you're going to go through the same slumps that you went through during your PhD in your workplace, right? So why would you expect that anything would change at home? It's a sort of mental, you have to get yourself in the right mindset for
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah.
And you can't always be in the right mindset 24/7. That's ridiculous. We're not robots, right? You have up days, you have down days. It's just what happens, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, definitely. I think
Mhm.
it's hard. And like when I talk to some other people about it, I'm like, so how has it affected you in like your grad life or
Mhm.
like grad studies or whatever? And like
Yeah.
their answers are completely irrelevant to being a grad student. It's just like
Yeah.
general things. Like someone messaged me and was like, I found out I'm really crap at word games. And I was like, okay, like I'm glad you were able to
You're
have this
learning about yourself.
realization. Yeah, you're learning about yourself. You're still
Mhm.
engaging in some sort of learning. Or
Yeah.
like one person was like, well, I cook a lot and I play a lot of online games with my friends now. And I was like, sick.
Cool. Yeah.
Like
Like you found
that's
another thing to do with your time.
exactly. So
Yeah.
I think everyone's handling it differently. And I
Mhm.
think that's just what's important, is like you
Yeah.
need to do whatever's making you feel best. Like I know for me, I'm always someone that needs to plan things
Mhm.
out. Like I'm really anal about that. And I've noticed that like in these times, I'm forcing myself to take everything day by day, because if I even think about
Yeah.
future long-term planning, blah, 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 like I will just send myself into a spiral,
If the
and
government is
that's it.
taking it day by day, I feel like we're allowed to take it day by day as well, right? Like no one knows what's going on, right? So if I can't plan the next 3 days, then that's not my problem, right? Like take it one step at a time. And hopefully that puts everybody at ease, but I know it won't. One thing that I do want to touch upon, because I saw this quite a bit in the social media outreach that we did.
Mhm.
A lot of people have said that their conferences have been canceled, and only like how did COVID affect your research? And someone replied, only canceled every major conference presentation on my CV for 2020. How do you feel about that?
I mean, it's unfortunate. I understand
Mhm.
why the conferences did it, but what's important is like to make sure you still write that on your CV
Yes.
and still get that credit on your CV. APA has actually released formatting on how to format
Yeah.
those presentations on your CV in proper APA formatting to say that it was canceled because of COVID.
Maybe we can
So
post that when we upload this
Yeah, I
video.
think that would be good.
yeah, we'll
Yes.
include
Yes.
that link, but it's important to know that like it's really unfortunate that those things
Hmm.
got canceled. I totally understand, obviously, in this mentality of like publish or perish or get all these conference
Yes.
presentations in order to
Hmm.
be a stellar PhD
Successful.
student,
Yeah.
whatever, like all that other
Hmm.
crap. It's important to still get credit for those things. It's not your
Definitely.
fault that the conference was canceled. It's not your fault that your presentation didn't go through. So still
Hmm.
write down that you were
Submitted
supposed to do this
abstract. Yeah.
presentation.
Accepted
Whatever,
abstract.
yeah,
Whatever. Yeah.
abstract was whatever, accepted for an oral presentation, poster
Hmm.
presentation, whatever it may be. But APA did release specific
Yeah.
formatting on how to format writing out those presentations that ended up getting canceled. So it's important
Right.
that it sucks that it's canceled,
Hmm.
but you can still get credit for it. I know
For
that happened to
sure.
me. I was supposed to give a talk at a different university and it
Oh
got
no.
canceled. But
Yeah.
like, I'm still writing it down in my CV
For
because
sure. Yeah.
these are circumstances that are out of my control. I think it's really unfortunate. And I
Hmm.
think it's really stress-inducing for students who rely on these presentations in order for funding, scholarships, moving
Exactly.
forward, job
Hmm.
applications. But make sure you get
Yeah.
the credit for it.
Mhm.
Even volunteer work, I'd say, because there's a lot of people who do outreach in schools, that sort of thing. If it's canceled, you can't go, but if you had something scheduled, for sure write it down, right? Like there's no
Mm-hmm.
way that you shouldn't, because if you had it scheduled, if you made the accommodations to do something in that period of time, you should definitely get the credit for it, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I had to go to like 2 weeks ago. I was supposed to go. A huge group of our research supposed to go to like the largest planetary science conference in the world in Texas, but then that
Hmm.
got canceled. And for me,
Right.
I know for quite a few of us, it was quite frustrating because I won one of the travel grants that they offered there, and I had to give an
Yeah.
oral and a poster presentation. So,
Oh, that would have been
all
lovely.
So you're getting
yeah.
all these credits that just like,
Yeah.
Oh, they're on my CV
For
regardless,
sure. Keep them, yeah.
but it was also more frustrating for me is because since it's my penultimate year, this is like
Mhm.
my networking year.
That's the
And
thing, right?
so
Yeah.
now, I mean, I'm just going to have to use email and Zoom to connect with people. I think now it's more of an understanding just to reach out to people now via
Mhm.
email instead of in person.
For sure, yeah,
But it
because
was
there's no other way
definitely,
to do it.
but it was definitely frustrating. I had plans to meet up with all these different research groups, and that just got thrown out the window.
That's
Yeah.
really hard.
So
Hmm.
I have to adapt to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's frustrating. I guess one positive side is if you're someone who's a little bit more socially anxious and have difficulty approaching people in person, like
Oh,
you're
I
kind of
quite love it.
mandated to approach them
Yeah.
It was like you
via
see all,
email now.
it was like you see
Mhm.
all the memes. So it says quarantine. Extroverts are just like sad and depressed. Introverts are having the time of their life.
Yeah, partying it up, yeah. And yeah.
It's hard for everyone. I think everyone's going to end up, I don't want to say going to end up, but I think everyone is feeling some feeling of like being unsettled
Mhm.
at this
Mhm.
point.
And to be honest, moving forward, we've now developed skills that, a lot of people can't say that they've had. We can show, to potential workers and that sort of thing that we're adaptable. We can still be productive in times of adversity. Like this is my CV talk, I guess, in terms of,
Put it
how
on as like
to
a
market
skill, like
yourself.
was still productive in a pandemic.
Yes, I managed to do X, Y, and Z when the world was burning. So
I made 50 loaves of bread during pandemic.
I'm so excited for your bread making. I don't know,
yes.
did either of you take up any like new skills or like new hobbies, Gavin, other than like your bread making that you've taken on now?
I'm gonna try and learn a second language, but that's about it right now.
Okay.
I've done a 3D puzzle and I've started watercoloring. So
Oh,
Oh, I've had
yeah,
so many people take up painting now. It looks a
it's
lot of them looks
therapeutic.
really good. Yeah, it looks
I have a
really.
few friends. I have a few friends that are doing like watercolors, and then hold on, here at the table, I have my adult paint by number that I'm
Beautiful,
doing currently.
intricate.
Ooh, that is nice.
It's very
Bob Ross
intricate. I
took
don't know if
away.
I can bring it as close to the camera, but like you can
Are there
see it's
numbers on
very,
there?
yeah.
Oh
Oh,
my
See,
they're so
goodness.
tiny.
it's very tiny. Like this kit came with, where is it? A magnifying glass.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
It's
There's
real one. Yeah.
there's some patches that are so small you have to paint it with a toothpick.
Oh my gosh.
Well, around April, my girlfriend and I are going to be busy with a Nintendo Switch, so
You're gonna have such a good time.
You're never gonna
yeah,
do work ever again.
Yeah,
they're sold out
that's the last.
everywhere.
Are
Well,
they? Yeah.
except for the lights. There's still plenty of lights, but the regular
Mhm.
consoles, they're all sold out.
Huh.
Oh, interesting.
That's
I have
because
been
that's
playing
what
more
everyone's
video
doing.
games recently as well.
Me
I have
too.
noticed that.
Oh well.
So, I mean, once again, I
Mhm.
think at the end of the day, it's like whatever keeps you sane, as
Mhm.
long as you're not coming in contact with other people and you're washing your hands. And if you're feeling sick, you're staying home. Like
Yeah.
And even
within
if you're
those
not feeling sick,
limitations.
yeah. Even if you're not
Yeah.
feeling sick, stay home
Stay
as
home.
much as you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Like
wanted to.
go for a walk. Don't come in
Yeah.
contact.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to bring up one point actually. I forgot to
Yeah.
bring it up earlier before if we get to the end.
Mhm.
I got a message from a friend of mine. I'm not going to mention their institution or
Yeah.
it's like what they
Mhm.
do for confidentiality, but they said they are having an issue when it comes to trying to contact their supervisors. Their supervisors have pretty much gone off grid, but
Right.
apparently they've
MIA.
still been emailing their coworkers,
Hmm.
but not them, and they have to they were supposed to finish up the PhD this year. And they
Huh.
also have the issue that they're also in between jobs because if you're about to finish
Yeah.
and you had something lined up, how do you think institutions should be handling like HR paperwork for students that were supposed to be leaving, but they need that paperwork ready so they could still
Yeah.
get the next job and actually pay bills?
And
Because
that
that's a
comes
little bit
back.
of a worry.
Yeah, it comes back to the uncertainty. There's people across the board, some people, well, at least my supervisor is doing a decent job at, keeping in contact and making sure that we're all up to date and providing that sort of reassurance that, everything is going to be okay moving forward. You're not going to get delayed. But if you don't get that reassurance from, people in higher positions, it's scary, right? Because you're so uncertain and that other people also don't know what's going on, so you have no one to turn to. So I feel for your friend in the sense that how are you supposed to make plans going forward when everyone has just stopped?
Can they
Right.
go to like a next higher up, like a department head, or like I'm just trying to think about how I would try to approach this
Right.
situation if this were me, because that's really hard. Like your supervisor is so integral to you
For sure.
moving forward, being done. And if this person all of a sudden is MIA or you can't get in contact with them,
maybe send a message through the coworkers that they're actually talking to. Be like, also, by the way, so-and-so would want to talk to you.
I guess
Please arrange that. Yeah.
I guess they could. I wasn't mentioned about going higher up, but I don't know if it's just because either it seemed a bit too going behind backs, but I think it comes to a point that you have to, or maybe because the higher ups are so busy and swamped trying to adapt to everything.
Maybe they don't have time for
it's
you.
not a high priority for them.
Right. But even just like sending an email being like, I received your email, I understand your concern, let me get back to you in XYZ days, just because we are prioritizing different things right now, or because we need to deal with these things first. And it's not that your concerns aren't important. It's just that unfortunately we have this humongous to-do list of other things that we need to get done before we can address your concerns, which I know still is like crap. I know that I still would not be feeling very good in that scenario, but at least an acknowledgement.
Confirmation emails, I think, should be a given at this point, because there's no way that you can follow up except for through the internet, right? So I feel like that has to be a sort of given in higher up situations, that you should at least say, I received your email. We'll get to it as soon as possible.
Like those automated emails you get trying to get online services. They say, we have received your query. We will respond to you within 3 to 5 working days.
Yeah. At least you have a timeline, right? And it eases your anxiety a little bit, because after that timeline, you know that something went wrong.
That's really hard.
Try again. Yeah. It's difficult. And that's the whole point of making this podcast, right? To see everyone's different sides, to see whether it's uniform, whether people are struggling, and hopefully providing some reassurance that, you know, it might be bad now, but hopefully we'll come out better in the end. Yeah,
I hope so. Maybe we'll do like a follow-up episode in a couple weeks, like depending on where we are, and we'll just do a follow-up episode to see A, how we're doing, but B, to see how everybody else is doing, because you know, currently, because we're still at the very relatively at the beginning of this, people are still trying to navigate these systems, and maybe in a couple weeks time, when you know there's firmer conclusions, there's firmer policies or whatever put in place, or whoever's in an administrative role has a better understanding of what is going to happen moving forward, maybe experiences will change. I don't know, maybe we'll do a follow-up just to see how we're all feeling in a couple weeks.
Yeah, and this is ever changing, right? You know, you always get new mandated rules every day, especially from Western. I get email updates every day. So, you know, this is ever changing. Next week, we might be a totally different conversation, right? We have no idea.
Oh, definitely. We're going to have to follow up in a couple weeks, I think. I guess with that then, are there any final notes? Does anyone have any final feelings that they kind of want to put out there?
Stay healthy and clean your hands. I think that's the best thing you can do right now.
The way that I sign off on emails is stay safe, stay healthy, stay at home. And that's my sentiment.
I would agree with both of those. Stay healthy in whatever regard you need to stay healthy, if that's mentally, if that's emotionally, if that's physically, whatever it is, do what you need to do. But as long as you are staying home and washing your hands. Yeah. And I guess we'll just leave it at that. I don't know, guys. Everybody stay safe. Hopefully you're able to relate to some aspects of this. We'll probably do a follow-up one in a couple weeks just to check in, on how we're all feeling, but then also just to check in and see how everybody else is feeling, if anything has changed in this time, and we can kind of go through that and go from there, I guess.
Yeah, sounds like a plan.
So, right? So I guess with that, final words is this has been Grad Life, just a very special segment. This time coming around, a very digital special segment. You know, if you liked our podcast, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, or if you want to get in contact with us, or if you think there's any content that you'd like us to speak about, let us know. But other than that, this is Grad Life. It's been a special segment of the Gradcast podcast. So just keep listening and everybody stay safe.